Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. This is where accounting professionals come to learn the most efficient and powerful ways to grow their accounting firms, sharpen their sales skills, and really have a path to creating consistent increased revenue. I cover topics from networking, pricing, ideal clients, how to handle objections, how to handle you're too expensive, and how to set boundaries with clients so you can stop giving away your time and expertise away for free and really start getting paid your value and your worth. You'll learn tips and strategies and also hear personal interviews from successful accounting professionals and others in the industry. This podcast will show you exactly how to create the firm and life of your dreams full of abundance. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Our special guest is a sought-after professional speaker, 5-time best-selling author, has spent over 35 years teaching, entertaining, and inspiring audiences worldwide. His career has taken him over 2.5 million miles in the air and has allowed him to gain a client list that reads like who's who of Fortune 500 companies. That includes Toyota, Disney, NASA, Bristol Farm, Northrop Grumman, and over 50 financial institutions. He has 6 books, one's on the way, and has been featured in USA Today, Harvard Business Review, and the books have been translated into many different languages. He is also a sales trainer and speaker, consultant, and coach. But before we welcome Rob Jolles to the show, I know that as a tax and accounting professional, you are completely sick and over grinding 14 hours a day, sacrificing your time with your family and friends, postponing vacations, and putting yourself and your health on the back burner. And I imagine you are exhausted from being on the daily financial roller coaster of discounting fees and then end up resenting your clients and the work that you do for them and being seen as a commodity. But, none of this is your fault. And I know that nobody is training on how to fix these problems and really connect the dots. So if you want to step up and take complete control over your firm's revenue, profitability with ease, and feel confident to start charging premium fees to get paid your worth and have clients appreciate you for the value you provide, then here's what I've got for you. Denise and I have set aside time in the next 48 hours to speak to you personally about how you can apply some new ideas and strategies to your firm today. So head on over to theabundantcall.com to book your call with us. Whatever your biggest challenges are, trust me, we've seen it and we know how to overcome it. So once again, head on over to theabundantcall.com. And now let's welcome Rob to the show. Welcome, Rob, to the show.
It's a pleasure being here. I'm looking forward to mixing it up with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm very excited to have you on the show and for the accountants and tax advisors listening today. I've already done your intro, but I always think it's better, Rob, to hear it directly from you. So just a little backstory for those listening. I met Rob through his son, who's a stand-up comedian, along with my boyfriend, and he was telling me all about his dad and how he's a sales trainer. He said, "Oh, I need to talk to your dad. I'm sure he's got some golden nuggets to share, not only with me, but for each of you who listens here, every single episode 2 times a month." So that's how Rob and I met, and he's got, I think, 7 books. Is that accurate? I think it was 7.
6, but 6. I'm working on a 7th.
Oh,
I'm
perfect.
working on a 7th.
So Rob has 7 books. So he'll share those with you right now where you can buy them if you'd like. But Rob, why don't you share real quick who you are and a little bit about your background?
Sure. I actually came out of the University of Maryland and was an insurance salesman. I sold life, health, and disability for 2 years, 4 months, 3 days, about an hour and a half. I actually made enough income when I was 21. It took me almost 11 years to exceed what I had earned when I was 21 and 22. So it wasn't a money thing with me. It was more of why 21-year-olds probably shouldn't be selling life, health, and disability. kind of a grinder there. New York Life kept me on as a trainer, and that's when I sort of learned to love the training side of sales. And if New York Life taught me to love sales, Xerox taught me how, because Xerox is a very process-oriented company. So sold for New York Life, trained for New York Life, sold for Xerox, was a trainer for Xerox. And I'm going into my 30th year, about 30 years ago now. I left the confines of the corporation and went on and started my own business. And so I got about 2.5 million miles in the air. I go all around the world and talk about actually, I mutated. It was always sales, sales, sales. There's so many people that don't like the word sales.
Well, so everyone listening does not like the word sales.
Right. So, I have the Simon & Schuster book, the classic customer-centered selling, and all my sales people love that one. But I wrote a book a couple years ago called How to Change Minds, The Art of Influence Without Manipulation. And I really wrote that one to everyone who said, I don't like the word selling, but every now and then I need to give my customer a push. And so that's where that one came from.
Oh, love it. And where can they buy them?
All my books, like most books, you can get them on all online stores. Amazon's a good place to go because like most authors, I have an author's page. So all my books are hanging around there. And there's even, and I promise I won't hawk books, but my most recent book is a book called Why People Don't Believe You. And it really deals with not so much what we say, but how we say it. And I really kind of felt that was sort of the end of my trilogy of trying to tell people, there's a process for persuasion. How to Change Minds was kind of more along the lines of why we need to do this. And this last book is, okay, you know why we need to do this, you know how we do it, but you still have to say it the right way, and you still have to, the words and the tune have to line up. And so that's kind of where I've been at.
I love it. And what's the 7th book going to be?
Well, I'm not allowed to tell you yet.
Oh,
in development, but it'll be good. I promise. I promise.
Well, we'll have you back when that one comes on. Okay. But today we are talking about a very interesting topic. So make sure to grab your yellow legal pad, maybe it's white, and a pen so you can take some notes. And Rob's going to really take us down the pathway on how to figure out where your client is in the decision cycle. And he's going to share 6 different stages of the decision cycle today, and might use some, some of you might have purchased a house. Some of you might have bought a car in your lifetime. And then, for those of you who work with business clients or aspire to work with business clients, we're also going to be sharing some examples of all of those stages of how a client, Rob, makes a decision. So tell us how you broke these stages down, and then we can get into the first stage.
Good. Sounds good. And it's interesting. It's fun. Like the old Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. I'd love to tell you this wonderful tale of how we kind of discovered it, of why it was just gnawing at us, and we needed to to figure this out. But in reality, I was actually on a development team, and we had some extra money in the budget. And we, like most development teams, we were working on a sales model, and we said, well, what are we going to do with this? And we thought, you know what? I wonder if we just kind of reverse engineered this. I wonder if we looked at it from the client's perspective, almost began to start with a hypothesis of, I wonder if clients go through repeatable and predictable stages when they make a decision for change or to buy something. And that's really where it came from. It was almost an accident of kind of just a little bit extra budget money, some time, and then put some research into it. And then we loved it. And and from then on in, we were great. But it always makes me smile of, I wonder if the budget had run out, if we'd even gone this route. But okay.
So, it's great, because I always wondered, I know so much about sales, but I'm like, how'd you have time to dissect it into 6 different decision cycles and blah, blah. And now I understand you had a budget, and this was something you were teaching, and you reverse engineered it. It's fantastic. Okay.
That's correct. But for those of you who weren't listening very carefully at that story, let's go with the second story, which is because I had a burning need to study the decision cycle. That's a better story.
Yes, it is.
But the reality is, even when you say it, by the way, when you say it um, and people are listening, you say, well, what if I could prove to you that your clients are going through 6 predictable stages? Would that be of value to you? And everyone is always scratching their head going, well, of course. I mean, shouldn't that be the first question we ask for the rest of our lives? Whether you're selling, persuading, influencing, or just problem solving and consulting, which, by the way, still fit into that same bucket. We need to start there. So I'll kind of rattle through them, and you break in whenever you want and poke me with a question here or there. But the first stage is what we call just the satisfied stage. It's actually the most boring stage to me. And I remember we were kind of bummed out when we noticed that there were numbers lining up with it, because we always like to think, well, everybody is a potential client. And the reality is of they're not. There's a satisfied stage. I'll break down numbers for you and give you a hint. There aren't a whole lot of people in that stage. But we have to respect the fact that there is a stage where people are completely and totally happy with what they're doing. And from a persuasion or sales side of things, we really do need to just leave them alone. Now, I'm going to tell you, I think some people think they're in that stage and they may not be.
Right.
So we might take a look under the hood real fast, but we have to understand that they could very well be telling the truth when they go, I'm good where I am, thanks. So in a sense.
How would someone even, like, let's say, I'm a CPA. I have my firm, and someone called me and said, I got your name from Joe CPA. I've been looking for someone new. I feel like there's more money I could be saving on my taxes, and this year just didn't go as I thought, and I want to get another opinion or find someone who might know more than my current CPA. At that point, they're not really in a satisfied stage if they've reached out for help.
They're definitely not the satisfied stage. That's called the acknowledged stage. And they may even be further, by the way. But the second stage is just what you described. Something is nagging at them. They really haven't made a decision for change, but they're bothered. They're annoyed by something. This is where we say the window of sales kind of begins to open up a little bit here. So it's I always refer to the acknowledged stage as kind of a whining, moaning stage, meaning if they like you, they'll tell you, but it's kind of whiny. And if you go, well, great, I'll tell you what then, I'll do your taxes next year. They go, whoa, yeah, it's not that bad. I just wanted to whine about it a little bit. They may not use that words, but that's one of the reasons why people need to learn how to persuade and influence. Because just because somebody called us up or we bumped into them at a party or they got referred to us and started whining about their current accountant or their inability to use QuickBooks and do their taxes themselves.
Right.
A solution isn't really what we need right now. We actually need to understand the problem deeper, but instinctively, what we do when we hear that is we immediately, from a sales perspective, we want to solve it for people. And I sort of always think to my head when anybody says to me and starts whining and going, I really don't like the accountant I'm working with and I'm not real good with numbers, I almost always want to ask the question, when did you become aware of that?
Because that's a great question.
Yeah, it's not. And if you want proof of how long people can be in the acknowledged stage, rarely will you hear, oh, last night, or I woke up with it this morning. I go, about 5 years now. So you can see how ridiculous it is really to be instinctive and say, well, then let me fix it for you. I don't want to fix anything. I want to appreciate that when people are in the acknowledged stage, in their mind, it hurts, but it doesn't hurt that badly. And a rule of thumb that we have in sales is to always remember that people don't fix small problems. Yep. They fix big problems. So that acknowledged stage is sort of, they sort of waffle and hang there. And then something happens. Remember, there's no salesperson around. Then something happens. So for me, I'm an entrepreneur, 30 years. I'm I'm ashamed to say that when I first went into business, I looked for a real budget accountant for me. I found a person who was yeah. Oh, it's a great deal. I even got a part of an office suite for it. So I got an office deal. I got my taxes done, and I got fined like 9 times that year for this being late and this being wrong. And this
Oh no.
young entrepreneur learned in a heartbeat. Probably the most important person in my business is going to be the accountant. I'm not saving money on the next one. I want a good accountant. But that's the way people are wired. That's why we
It's
need good
so true.
salespeople.
And they are
Yeah.
the most trusted advisor. I mean,
Yeah.
this podcast, like the accounting and financial side of your business for people like me and Rob, your ideal clients, you're the most valued person. And I know we're not going to have lots of time to talk about it, but why would any accounting professional or CPA want to put themselves as a good deal if you're the
Yeah.
most valued, important piece to an entrepreneur's business?
Yeah. It's like a good brain surgeon. I don't want budget brain guy.
I don't
I
want
want
budget brain guy either. I want the most expensive where I have to get helicoptered into their city because they only work with a select few patients, but you know that it's going to be done right. And if you have cancer, it's going to be gone and you'll live another 10, 20, 30 years.
That's exactly right. And oh, by the way, you do get what you pay for. So I'll even argue the fact that when an accountant says my rates are here, they're higher than anyone else, or they're in the top 10%, I would argue you still might be the least expensive accountant I ever use. Because when I add everything that goes into this, and that means making sure things are done right and proper and on time, and there aren't fines and fees that are going to be attached to this, or things that are going to haunt us in the future, just like getting your house done. I want the real good carpenter, even though it may cost me a little bit more to get the room done. It's done right, and that home is of more value now. So maybe some other point we'll talk about price, but
I would love to, but
yeah.
that would be for another episode because
Yeah,
today I know we're
yeah, that's
focusing on the 6 decision cycles so you have a repeatable and predictable way to figure out, well, where is your prospect at in
right.
the process of figuring out where those decision points are and how you might be able to work with them, or do you need to leave them alone? So, Rob, what's the third stage of the decision cycle?
And this is kind of, you have to, I'm almost geeky about this because I actually get excited about my own stuff sometimes, but this is kind of a cool area because the third stage is what we call the criteria stage. And this is where the needs are. And this is often when you may very well get an accountant may get a phone call. They may get it in that whining acknowledge stage, but the criteria stage is a stage where people actually have a rough idea of what they're looking for. In other words, now here come what we call the needs. So that conversation might be something along the line of, I'm making some calls and what I need is somebody that is well versed in, works with financial planners or well versed with somebody who has an S corp or something like that. And I also want to make sure that I'm able to that they can speak on a relatively simple basis, so I can understand
Fourth grade reading level.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. But remember I said there's a cool part to this, and here it is. The criteria stage has this really neat relationship with the acknowledge stage. It's almost the polar opposite. In other words, the acknowledge is the problems, and the criteria is the needs, and they link up. You see, needs don't fall out of heaven. When somebody says, I want somebody that speaks at a fourth grade level and keeps it very simple, where do you think that came from? You think they read that in Accountings Are Us magazine? No. The problem shapes the need. When people typically a need is shaped by something that didn't go right. So when somebody wants it simple, we're usually pretty sure whoever they were working with made it very complicated. When somebody says, I want to make sure that I never get fined, they've been fined. So what's interesting is when we get to the sales angle of this, you'll find that 95% of the salespeople out there will ask a client what they need or tell them how well we do things. And the smart people, and I'm speaking to accountants now, I'm not trying to schmooze with you. I'm saying you're smarter than you think. Your instincts are better than you think. I think you're better trained than most salespeople to study the problem. And in fact, that's going to pay dividends down the road. But again, I'll touch on that one in a minute. We've got satisfied. I'm happy. We got acknowledge. I'm whiny. We got criteria. I think I know what I need, and I'm going to start looking for it.
Yep.
We have the next stage, the fourth stage, which is what we call investigate, where now I'm looking at this accounting and a firm, and I'm looking at that accounting firm, and I'm basically taking my criteria and applying it to that conversation. So I'm basically shopping around, and it's but again, that shopping list, that's all come from from the problems that I was living with. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Bang.
And
Yeah.
how would you, because I really believe, Rob, that, someone's like shopping around, especially in this industry or with people like me and you, there's really nothing. It's not like we're going to Amazon and figuring out which cup we want to buy because there's 8 different vendors making the exact same cup. And I feel that if the firm owner can get really good at the problem stage or figuring out, what did you say, where the problem meets the need?
Problem shapes the need.
The problem shapes the need. If you can get really good at that, my guess is that you can bypass the investigative stage because those clients wouldn't need to shop around. If it was presented in a way where they can't compare you to anyone else, just like you can't be compared to anyone. I can't be compared to anybody because there is no other probably female teaching accounting and tax pros only and making sure that every client they have has the result of what they wanted. That's not something you can go on Amazon and type in and say, oh, well, let me see the 5 different places that could help me with that. We're not made in a different country or China or something, and with manufacturers. I think with the service-based industry, and I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this, how could you bypass stage 4 where your clients don't even need to shop around?
Well, we're going to bypass a few things, because right now I'm really inside the mind of the client. But to answer your question, I want to be very direct. The first thing that you do, and businesses struggle with this, is you have to figure out really kind of a sense of your branding. An accountant's an accountant. If I said that to an accountant, I think it would be offensive. It should be. I think every business has, just like mine. I'm a sales trainer. Wow, we're all the same. Gee, are we? I hope not, because there are a few things that I do really well. I can't be everything to everybody. So like most people who have branded their businesses, few things I do real well.
Yep.
That's what I'm trying to get my client to want. And again, I'm going to be brisk with this because I'm sort of on the inside of the wheel talking about the outside now. But I'll tell you this, if I know the problem shapes the need, wouldn't it make sense for me to ask questions about problems that I know I fix well?
Yep.
You see? So that's why when we problem solve, maybe it's an accounting firm, maybe it's just a one-person operation, very small. But I would argue that, all right, the bad news is you're small. The good news is I'm not going to be handed off to a bunch of different people. I'm going to be working with the owner. So let's make lemonade out of that. You understand that I would love to talk to somebody who's been in an accounting mill and has had this person and that person and discuss how difficult that issue was. Because in a sense, I'm drawing you to my strength within that conversation. That's how we keep people from investigating. We take what we have and we change it from a nice to have to a need to have.
Yep. Love it.
Good. Okay. So after they investigate, they select. I have very little to say about that one. Clients will pull the trigger. But there's always a last stage, which I think is important, which is they'll always reconsider. Most people.
So stage 5 is reconsider?
Stage 5 is select. So that's that kind of just pulling the trigger stage. Okay.
Got it.
And then the last stage that they go through is kind of a buyer's remorse. And they'll sit back and go, that last accountant that I had, I wasn't real crazy about her, but At least I knew her. You know, she was a friend of the family, and even when things didn't go well, I knew who to call, and then they jump on it fairly quickly. You could be better. What if you're worse? And where that remorse comes in. So when I talk about sales, and let's sort of just ease to the outside, I think we need to keep an eye on all six stages. Good news is it's not a straitjacket. I loved your question about how do we keep people out of the investigate stage. The best way to do it is, again, get them to want what we do well. And
Yeah.
you need to know what that is, by the way.
Yes.
I'm a guy who consults with a lot of companies. Toyota's been a client of mine for over 20 years. When I first started working with Toyota, I remember asking them that question, and they sent me out of the room. This was a lot of senior people because they had never really put that question out there. And to me, how can I sell it when I don't know what it is you want the client to want? You see?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I worked for this nutty company called Xerox. Our boxes cost more and typically did less. I'm not ashamed. I'll tell you this. Did a few things really well, like ease of use was real important. Why is
Mhm.
it you think that every single client I ever met with for the rest of my career at Xerox, one of the first questions was, who uses the equipment? Because it's open, it's not problem related, and there's a right and wrong answer in terms of where my strengths are. So I think that we have to, when we're looking at the sales side of this, we have to understand that the things that most people don't like about selling, here's what you need, and they're pitching an idea.
Yeah.
Let's pitch the word pitch altogether. What a horrible word.
I
I'm
know,
not
but
here to
that's my
pitch you.
nickname, the Pitch Queen, because I didn't want to have my last name, Michelle Weinstein. So I came up with that name. But it's not pitch in the sense of, like shoving something down someone's
Mm,
throat. But in sales, people think about it and come to me all the time. Michelle, I need help with my sales pitch. But the
right.
way we do it is exactly what you're talking about. We
Yeah.
figure out, what are you really good at and turn the nice to haves into the need to haves and get really good at just a few things and do it well. And then that's how you can really, have a reverse engineered pitch. It's not really
Yes.
like you're throwing it and making someone say, you need to do this, you need to do that, but it's a reverse engineered pitch because yeah, that word, someone even asked me that the other day. And I was like, I don't know. I pitched on a show called Shark Tank, and it's called a pitch. When you
Yep.
share with someone what you do, or your elevator pitch, or what I call your brand shake. It's like, how do
Yeah.
you describe to someone what you do that you're really, really good at?
Yeah. I think when you look at Shark Tank and you're looking at venture capitalists on one side of the show and somebody pitching an idea on the other, it's more of a presentation than a one-on-one conversation.
Yes.
And when I give a presentation, it's really going to be about 90% me. I'm going to be doing most of the talking. And so there is the element of pitch there. When we're talking about sitting down with a client one on one, we need to remember that the more that client talks, the more they're going to like you. And
Yes.
so we've got to make sure that we're asking open ended questions. And one more thing, just early on, I want to talk about a client's issues. Believe me, I want to hear what's not working right with this other accounting firm that you're using, or you probably wouldn't be on the phone or be sitting in front of me.
Right.
But we have to remember something that we have to earn the right to get to questions like that. So my first suggestion for people who are listening is if you want to get at the client's problems, earn the right to get there. And that means keep your questions open. Let them tell you about their businesses. Let them brag a little bit. Social people will go a little bit long on this. Dominant people will go a little short on it. Analytical people will get a little technical on it. But keep in mind that phrase I told you, the more they talk, the more they're going to enjoy the conversation they're having with you. So you have to pay your dues. Obviously, I want to get at what brought you here, what drove you here, and I want to get at those issues in that acknowledge stage. But
Yep. And those are
you
great
got to
questions.
create trust.
Yeah, you have to create, I always call it the know, like, and trust factor. And,
Yeah.
we should be, I always talk about the 80-20 principle, Rob. I'm sure you've
Mhm.
read that book before,
Yep. Yep.
where, you literally will listen 80% of the time. So your client is talking 80% of the time, and you're only talking 20%. and
Ooh, and
listening
that
for
is
80.
challenging too. That is
So
challenging.
hard. So
You know,
hard.
I actually, you might want to use this sometimes, or somebody listening, you might want to try it if you're role playing in your office. Grab a chess clock. You can actually get an app for your smartphone where you basically have two plungers, two buttons that are releasing two different clocks. And if you want to see whether you're hitting that 80/20 you just heard, why don't you have a conversation? Hit the button every time you're talking and hit the button every time the other person's talking. And I
Oh,
think you'll have a much better idea of
that's a great
how
idea.
challenging it is. It's really
It
hard.
is such a great idea.
I'll take 50/50, by the way. I'll take 50/50 in my world. Uh, but let me touch on one other thing about this
Okay.
decision cycle, and I promise I'll leave it alone after that.
Okay.
Or one and a half things. Within the cycle, there are actually three decision points that you're going to be listening for. Okay. The
Okay.
first one's what we call the fix, don't fix. It's like a line in the sand. So if you're trying to scratch your head going, how would I know where the client is? Are they going to, they won't tell you. If you think a client is through that acknowledge stage and actually serious about looking for a solution, why don't you ask them? So it's a yes, no question of, are you committed to making a change? Or you could say, do you think it's worthwhile now looking at some other ideas? But if you want a temperature read in a conversation that you think your client is further along and you don't really have to spend time on that problem, ask them that question. If the answer is no, you just got your answer that you're going to have to double back and help
Mm-hmm.
and learn more about the problem. If the answer is yes, you don't really have to go poking the bear and hitting that problem anymore. So that fix don't fix line, that's the tough one. That's the one people will usually clients will take a long time to get to. When we sit down with them, we want to speed that up a little bit. But one, again, in the client's mind, one, do I want to fix it or not? Two, what am I going to fix it with? So let's pair up a trial close for that one. If you're with a client and you're now kind of getting a list of what that client is looking for. Okay, I need things simple. So I hear from you. Okay, I want to be able to reach out and get and talk to you when I need you. All right, let me take that one down. That's my list of criteria. And sometimes just turning that list around before you even discuss your services and say, did I get everything? Did we miss anything? Is that what it's going to take to make you happy? What you're doing is you've got a client who's committed to change and now is saying, that's what it's going to take to get my business. Now tell me, how easy the sale will be if somebody gives you a list. You can even prioritize the list, but a list. So one, do I want to fix it? Two, what am I going to fix it with? And three, where am I going to get it from? And that's when they're shopping around and looking. There aren't great trial closes for that one. Believe me, I've got one. I'm about ready to let it loose, but it's not a pretty trial close. It's not one I would ask all the time because it's a little old school, but I think we've all heard, if I'm able to do all this and I can prove to you I can do it better than anyone else, would you give me a realistic shot of working with you? And that makes some people uncomfortable. It's called a pre-commit. But and I still have not told you what my firm does or how it addresses this list. But please remember, when you trial close people and you're trying to trial them on this decision cycle, the intent is to smoke out objections. It is to get people to maybe say something. Maybe they're not the decision maker. Maybe this conversation got a little further than they want. I would appeal to anyone, and I'll be quiet on this, but appeal to anyone who's ever spent a lot of time, money, and resources to land a client and realize later on, not only did you not land that client, in fact, you were never going to land that client. This is why pre-commits actually exist. I would not ask them of every client, but I do ask them because I'm not going to fly out here and bring resources and begin to do a bunch of things, find out that I'm not even talking to the right person. So those are the decision points, and those are the trial closes that buddy up to those decision points. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does make sense. I was actually having that discussion today with a colleague of mine. And for the firm owners, you all know this. Sometimes someone will book a call with me to learn about my services and our 8-week sales mastery training here. And they're 50-50 owner in the firm. And I ask, well, is the other firm owner available to join you on this call? And even if they say, no, I was just going to get the information and pass it on, I will reschedule the phone call with you, the firm owner, because if you're 50-50, this is a huge decision to change your sales process or to even learn it. For most, firm owners, Rob, just so you know, I met, there really isn't a step-by-step repeatable and predictable, sales process in place for everything you're talking about, everything to what to say to the clients, what questions to ask, how to handle objections, how to pre-qualify, everything from A to Z. And what I do when it comes to this intent, right, and the pre-commitment on this is I will reschedule calls so all firm owners, if there's two, are available for that phone call. Because otherwise, why are you going to put your time and energy, into it? Just like if you're the firm owner about to meet with a business owner and they tell you they have a business partner, but the business partner isn't available, you would want to reschedule. It's like getting married, if two people get married, there's two people that sign all the paperwork for the wedding. And same goes for here. So with all that being said, Rob, we need to make sure that all decision makers are present at a meeting, and it's in everyone's best interest to reschedule and make sure that all parties are there. If you have two firm owners, or if you're the accounting firm meeting with a business client, both business owners are there, just as if they got married to their significant other, they both showed up to the wedding to sign the paperwork. So that's how I think making a decision to hire an accounting and tax firm or do anything with you, as the firm owner is the most crucial point. So, what
can I just jump in on one
second,
just real fast on that? Perfect, by the way. Couldn't agree with you more. Just be aware that sometimes we get into a very awkward position where we're trying to find out who are the decision makers. Okay, they don't often. They won't. Sometimes that's masked a little bit by the clients, particularly by some that are decision influencers, as we call them, but they're not the decision maker. And I think one of the mistakes that I made early in my career was I used to ask people, are you the one that makes the decisions on this? And what I think I was doing was kind of forcing people to be dishonest with me. So I had a mentor who told me one time, just ask them who besides yourself will be involved in this decision-making process. That allows that person some dignity as they say to you, well, I kind of run the show, but Larry and Mary also are involved. But if you ask them point blank, are you the one who's going to be making this decision? Don't be surprised if you get the answer yes, and their nose grows about 3 inches.
Mm-hmm. Yep, totally. Another thing I just thought of is there, and sometimes I ask this, is there anyone else that typically you have to run things by before you make a final decision?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Good.
So, Rob, is there anything else that you want to share or just button up as we end today's show on the 6 decision cycles or the 6 stages of the decision cycle, and that, accounting and tax firm owners can really apply and make sure they know exactly where their clients are standing before, an offer is made?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I'd say is trust your instincts. And I rarely say that to salespeople. I know I watch my instincts, but I would trust your instincts. I think that most accountants, and I've worked with a lot of accountants, are typically more analytical in nature. They really do want to problem solve in nature. And if you think of the ABCs of problem solving, what do you learn? You learn just because you think you might know what the problem is, good problem solvers go deeper into it. That actually, once you've earned the right to ask a client about the challenges they're having, go deeper, follow your instincts. And remember one last thing, that acknowledge stage, about 79% of the population is in any given area, we polled it for 17 years now, is sitting in the acknowledge stage. So understand it's a big stage. People stay there for a long time. Be patient. And try that trial close if you think that you've got them leaving that stage. That should work for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rob, so much for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. It was an honor to have you. This was fantastic. So thank you for taking out the time.
Well, Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on the show. And good luck and good selling to everyone. The selling word is not a bad word. It's okay. Good luck and good selling.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and hope to have you back again. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
What an amazing episode with Rob. I will definitely have him back here on the Abundant Accountant podcast. And, really thinking about how can you write these decision points or decision stages down and even maybe put in a pie chart. And when you have a client in front of you, think about, where are they in this process? For example, today I have been working on my closets. I feel like I don't get enough space, and I've been pretty much in the happy acknowledgement stage. I've been whining about it. I've been complaining about it, but I haven't actually taken action. And then something blows up, right? That's the criteria stage. I needed to do something. And that something is Denise, my partner in crime, is staying here for 2 or 3 weeks. We have a work trip, team building, and then also an accounting conference. And I said, I really need to get the closet situated. I need more space. How the builders build closets, as most of you know, it's a rod and a shelf. Not conducive for Marie Kondo type organizing. And I love organizing. So it was, I think, on Saturday, I went from the criteria stage to the investigative stage. I picked up the phone and I booked an appointment with one of my favorite stores called the Container Store and had an interior designer come by today, actually. So it was very great to see myself go through these exact stages today. So I went from being pretty whiny in the acknowledgement stage for quite a while, almost 13 years, 14 years, to going into the criteria stage where there is a need and there's an event happening that I had to make a change, or I wanted to make a change, and I was fed up. And then going into the investigative stage on Saturday and having an interior designer. The difference is I didn't do this with multiple companies. I just chose one based on something they do really well, which is quick turnaround. So think about, for your firm, what do you do really well? So we can eliminate the shopping around part where people are comparing you and commoditizing you to other firms. And then the select state, which I selected them today, buyer's remorse. Once it's installed, it will never be a buyer's remorse. But for your services, it might happen. And if you are completely exhausted of being on that daily financial roller coaster and sick of having clients compare you to other firms or call and price shop you and dealing with this commoditized type selling and tired of the vicious cycle of pleasing clients and feeling exhausted, powerless, depleted, and burnt out, remember, none of that is your fault and you're not alone in that. And I also know that nobody is training you on how to fix those problems and really connect the dots. So if you want to step up, take full control over these challenges that your firm is having so you can double your revenue in the back half of this year, finally feel confident to charge premium fees and get paid for the value that you provide and get paid your worth, then I've got this for you. Denise and I have set aside some time in the next 48 hours to speak to you personally about new ideas you can apply to your firm today. So head on over to theabundantcall.com to book your call. Whatever your biggest challenge is, trust me, we have seen them all, and we also know how to overcome it. So head on over to theabundantcall.com. We'll get on the phone for about 45 minutes, and we'll get crystal clear on what's working and what's not in your firm and what's really keeping you stuck, but also identify where you want to be with your firm so that you do get paid your value, you do get paid your worth, and you're never seen as a commodity to anyone else ever again. So once again, head on over to theabundantcall.com. We look forward to speaking to you, and have a beautiful day.